Hi, everyone. We're just admitting everyone in from the waiting room. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to see familiar faces. Just wait for everyone to get here. I'm Suzanne Grossman. Good to see everybody. Nice to know so many people here. And we know some more people will be trickling in. So thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Suzanne Grossman. I head up the Career Services Office for the Marxe School of Public and International Affairs. I'm here with Marnie Smith. Marnie, do you want to wave? We're the Marxe Career Services team. I think we know a lot of you, but I don't know everybody, so I'm happy to see everyone here tonight. We're excited to have this event, our HEA program event. Special thanks to the HEA Club. Are there any HEA Club members and leadership who want to wave? I'm not a few.
I see Nicole Wright waving.
Oh, okay, yes, I see Nicole waving. So we have our panel for tonight.
Hi, Brian.
Brian's waving too, great. We're gonna do a sort of a Q&A that I'm gonna moderate, and then we'll give you all time at a little bit later to ask your questions. And a few things. We're gonna have a brief poll. And there was a change, and I'm not sure a lot of you saw this, but we, our speaker, Bipasha Day, was not able to make it. She had a personal situation. She did send us a brief video, which she was really kind to record of herself. So we'll watch that in the beginning, and you can hear some of the things she was planning to say. And I'm sure she'd be willing to have some follow-up. So let me get started with the poll. Here's our first poll. See what programs. We're assuming most people are from the higher ed program, but we know there's a handful, maybe from a couple of other Marxe programs. So I'm getting a lot of answers. Just give you a few seconds. So right now it says 90% are from the HEA program. We have one person from the MPA program and 2 people from the MIA program. I'm going to end the polling for this question and share the results. Marnie, do you see the results? Yeah. Yes. Okay. So you see we've got 91% of people here tonight from the HEA program, which is always really great, and a couple of others. And then one more quick poll. So this poll, just so we kind of have a sense of what you're thinking about a doctoral program. Some of you might be very certain, not sure. And then I know there's at least one other person who is in a doctoral program, Alicia. Check if there's any others. So, okay. Anybody else? I'm going to end the polling, last chance, and then share the results. So it looks like 30% are very certain about wanting to be in a doctoral program, 70% are not sure, and then 3% certain that they don't want to be in a program but are curious. Oh, and then we have 2 folks in the doctoral program here now. Maybe whoever that is could share in the chat box. So thanks for participating in this poll. Right now I'm going to attempt to show this brief video from Bipasha, and then we'll come back together and we'll get started with this, with introducing our speakers. So let me share my screen.
Day, and I'm an alum of Baruch's Higher Education Administration program. I'm currently the Associate Director of Testing Services and First Year Institute programs at LaGuardia Community College, and I'm pursuing my doctoral degree in Educational Leadership and Management at Drexel University. The reason why I chose my program of study was actually due to a course at Baruch. It was Professor Stark's Educational Leadership and Management course. And the reason why I chose Drexel University was for a few reasons, one of which was their hybrid delivery method of online and in-person courses through executive weekends in Philadelphia. I'm the individual who thrives from face-to-face connections, and so it was very important for me to have that opportunity with my professors as well as my cohort mates. Another reason was the way their program is designed, the way the courses are scaffolded, and it's meant for working professionals. Everyone in my cohort is a working professional in the field of higher education, K through 12, or business organizations. Another reason why I chose Drexel was because I'm a product of CUNY. I've pursued my bachelor's as well as my master's degrees at CUNY colleges. I've worked at CUNY colleges, and so I wanted for this degree to be a little more broad in that sense. And so I did choose to pursue my doctorate at Drexel University to kind of broaden my horizon in that sense. And it's been very rewarding, to say the very least. Prior to my current role, I was an academic advisor. And so I was able to take what I was learning in my courses and apply it in my day-to-day, in my duties and responsibilities as an academic advisor, and even to date as in testing services and with first-year institute programs. My dissertation topic is student success from the perception of community college academic advisors. It's an instrumental case study, and it's been very rewarding to be able to research and write my dissertation on a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. The experience, I'm not going to lie, has been tiring, but as I mentioned, rewarding at the same time. And I think it's very important for any individual who is deciding to pursue their doctoral degree, whether it be in education or any related field, to understand what's at stake and what an investment this is on yourself. Ideally, in the future, I would like to become dean for any area related to student success. I'm really hoping that once I complete my doctoral degree, that will be one step closer to my ideal career. If any of you are interested in pursuing a doctoral degree, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love to chat. I would love to answer any questions that you might have. And I wish you all the very best. And I look forward to chatting with you.
Great. So I'm happy we were able to share that with all of you, and I will provide her contact information in case you want to follow up afterward. And this event is being recorded, so you could you'll be able to catch that too on the recording. So we have our three speakers tonight. I also want to point out Dr. Liza Bolitzer. Liza, do you want to say a quick hello? Introduce yourself for those who don't know who you are.
Yes. Well, so first of all, it's just wonderful to see faces, right? Faces are wonderful right now. So it's great to see everybody. I'm Dr. Liza Bolitzer. I'm a full-time faculty member in the HEA program. Started full-time in the program this year, and I had started adjuncting in the program in 2018. So, and I'm a product of the Teachers College Doctoral program, as is one of our speakers for tonight. So I'm really glad to be here with everybody. I do want to just say that it's exciting that during this time when everything is really upside down, so many people have come out to think about the future. And that's a really great thing to think about, I think, right now. So it's good to be here.
Thanks, Liza. So we have three speakers, and I didn't say that we're kind enough that Jordan McFarlane Bowe has joined us as a third panelist tonight. So we'll hear from him in just a moment. I'm going to start with Jolie Woodson as our first speaker, who will answer the first question, which is, please tell us briefly a little bit about your background, including your current role, what doctoral program you're in, and where you are in the program.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Jolie Woodson. Thank you, Suzanne, and everyone else for having me. And it's really nice to see people too. I've been doing these workshops for my work, but most people just leave their doing sessions like this with groups, but most people have been leaving cameras off. So I'm really excited to see people and to see some fun backgrounds. I saw Aurora Borealis. I was very excited about that one. I am the director of the Center for Career Development at the Cooper Union. So if you see my background, that's Cooper Union's foundation building. Cooper Union is a primarily undergraduate institution focused on art, architecture, and engineering. It's very small. We serve 1,000 students, and I manage a small team that provides career development resources, programming, counseling, and other things to the entire student body and alumni. I work there full time, and I've been there full time for pretty much, for as long as I've been in the doctoral program. And I'm a doctoral candidate at Teachers College at Columbia University. So Liza and I were colleagues when she was still at TC. And I am in data analysis, planning to defend my dissertation in the fall. I think I hit all the parts.
Thank you.
Yeah?
Yep. Next, Jordan, could you answer the same question for us?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jordan McFarland-Bowe. I currently, for the past 2 years, I've served as the Director of College Success for the LEADA Scholars Program. LEADA stands for Leadership Enterprise for a Diverse America. It's a national nonprofit headquartered in New York City, and we recruit lower income, high achieving high school students from their junior year, and then they're with us for life. So the organization is centered on leadership development and college access, because our goal is to diversify the national leadership pipeline. Previously, before working at LEADA, I've worked at CUNY Central in academic affairs. I've worked at Baruch College, FIT, and City College in student affairs roles. My former executive director is on the call tonight from City College. So yeah, I've been very fortunate. I'm a doctoral candidate at the American College of Education, abbreviated ACE. American College of Education is located in Indianapolis, Indiana, but it's a fully online college offering bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees. My program is a Doctor of Education, EDD in Leadership, and my concentration is higher education. And currently I'm in the finalizing my dissertation proposal stage. So by middle of June, I should have hopefully received successful approval from IRB. So that way in the summer, I can start collecting my data.
Great, thank you. And then next we have Maureen Samdi, one of my colleagues at the Marxe School, who is going to tell you some of her good news related to this topic. I won't spill the beans. I'll let you go ahead, Maureen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maureen Samdi. I know many of your faces and names, having worked at the Marxe School for several years. I'm the Associate Director of Academic Advisement at the Marxe School. My experience is primarily graduate advisement. Prior to higher education, I worked with Welfare to Work recipients in work development and education. And I am in the PhD program at the Graduate Center in Urban Education. And my good news is I defended yesterday. So I pretty much all done with some minor revisions to do. So great news for me, yay. Thank you.
Thanks, Maureen, and congratulations. We know this is a big accomplishment. So we'll go back to Jolie. Tell us about your motivation for choosing to embark upon a doctoral program. What led you to start researching programs and applying, and how did you ultimately decide on your program?
Sure. And I should just back up by saying my program at TC, at Teachers College, is in higher and post-secondary education. It's a Doctor of Education. And I've been at Cooper Union for so long that I actually forgot that I worked other places before. Before I was at Cooper Union, I worked for CUNY. I actually worked at Baruch while I was in the higher ed program there a long time ago. In the Office of College Advancement. So I've kind of jumped around a little bit, and I've done admissions and recruitment. I've worked in alumni volunteer engagement, and I've been in career development for over a decade. I was motivated to pursue a doctoral degree because I was seeing basically I was seeing people in positions that I was excited about and roles that I was excited about, and many of them had doctorates. And I realized that I would have more potential for professional growth if I had a doctoral degree. So it's a combination of wanting room for professional advancement, hoping to pursue leadership roles in administration, and really just wanting a challenge, which I definitely got. Wanting a challenge, wanting to grow intellectually. Yeah, so those were really my motivations. I don't know if part of your question was why my program or if that's a separate question. Yes. So my undergrad was at NYU. I did my first master's degree at Baruch. And this is, really, when I advise students, I tell them not to choose graduate programs based on geography, but a big factor for me was staying in New York and doing an in-person program. I wasn't really thinking about remote programs. And at the time that I started, I think there were a lot fewer of them actually, but it really wasn't something I was interested in doing. I had taken some online classes and it just really wasn't for me. And so I was really thinking about what options there were that would allow me to continue my full-time work in New York. And that would give me a new challenge. And there were only a handful. And when I started looking carefully at the faculty in the higher and post-secondary education program at Teachers College, I was just really impressed by them and what they were doing. When I first started in the doctoral program, I was really interested in access, equity, and persistence, and I still am, but my dissertation actually sort of approaches it from the perspective of college teaching. But really what drove me there was the faculty and the work that they were doing. And it's a very small program too, which I liked as well. Small meaning the doctoral cohorts are small, less than, at any given moment, probably, I don't know, 5, give or take, advisees per faculty member. So close knit. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Jordan, your motivation and how you ultimately decided on your program?
Sure. I mean, I'm going to give everyone the very honest opinion. I'm a Capricorn. I was looking up executive MBA programs in senior year of high school. So in terms of looking up doctoral programs, it started my college junior year at Baruch. I started writing poetry and creative writing as a first year at Baruch, but junior year I was taking poetry classes. And I was interested in getting a terminal degree, but not really considering a doctorate degree. And I was looking into MFA programs. And because I was also such an involved student leader at Baruch, I really started strongly considering student affairs for the master's and doctoral level because I loved peer mentoring so much and instructing first year seminar and being an RA. One of Baruch's first RAs back in 2010 was so transformative for me. But I think it really boils down to the fact that I'm very ambitious. And similar to what Jolie said, it's the people I was working with or being supervised by or trained by, some of them were current doctoral students. So it sort of pushed me to want to go that route. I would say I started getting serious about researching doctoral programs in 2017. I finished Baruch's Higher Ed program December 2015. And then it was important that I do this thinking about my finances. So I actually waited to get super serious until I paid off my debt from undergrad. So I became debt-free June 2017. And by that fall, I decided to apply. In between paying off my debt and applying to the program November 2017, I decided to compare PhD to EDD, traditional versus hybrid versus online. And I think I went the EDD route, the Doctor of Education route, because I wanted to do the scholar practitioner route and less the academic researcher route. I didn't necessarily want to teach. I wasn't keen on or identified yet as a researcher. And I was just so interested in being that student affairs educator, so I went the EDD route. Because of working in residential life at Baruch and FIT, and I left residential life in 2016. I really, selfishly, I just didn't want to do a brick and mortar anymore. Because when you're a student, and then you work in higher ed, it just sort of felt like there wasn't a lot of break in between. It was harder for me to separate personal and professional boundaries. So I ended up going with the fully online programs because I could finish within 3 years at American College of Education. The sticker price for all 3 years was $20,000. So it was important for me, now that I was debt-free, to be able to pay off this program without going back into debt. So that was a huge driving force for me, is that I can do these online courses. And I really was always jealous of people getting to travel and to take vacations. So that also allowed me to take a job where I can travel for work and also travel personally and still complete my doctoral work on a very flexible schedule.
Great, thank you. Maureen?
Hi, everyone. Well, my interest in doctoral studies, it took a while for me to make a final decision. It was much more of an intellectual pursuit, as well as my own professional development. When I thought about doctoral studies while I was in the higher ed program, I was fascinated by the classes. I was interested in student affairs, but I also work in student affairs and advisement. So I thought that if I did this, I would want to pursue something completely outside of that, outside of the directly work that I do. I took a couple of classes at the Graduate Center because I was on and off as to whether or not I would want to pursue this. And I knew it would be grueling intellectually and it would take a lot of time. I took about 2 classes before I made the decision to even apply. So it was a really long process. I should mention, I didn't mention before, that my research focused on policy at historically Black colleges, and my dissertation was specifically about litigation in Maryland's historically Black colleges. So while I wanted to pursue a doctoral program and I wanted it to be education and higher education related, I did want to do something outside of the directly related to the work that I do. So I knew that coming in, and I knew that I wanted to do something having to do with historically Black institutions because I learned more about them when I was in the master's program at Baruch. It was much more of an intellectual pursuit, and I said if I did this, I would do it at the Graduate Center. I work at CUNY, and financially it would have been more feasible for me with regard to loans and paying off additional work. So I thought about it. I took some time. Like I said, I took a class, and then I took I think a year, and then I took another class, and then I decided to apply. So it was really very long and diligent process for me, and it's been extremely rewarding and a lot of work. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
Maureen, staying with you, what's it like working full-time and being in a doctoral program, and what do you wish you knew before that you know now?
I think it's definitely a lot of work. I took 2 classes a semester. At one point, I took 1 class a semester because with work and the schedule, it just got to be too much. I think I always knew that it would be grueling in terms of your time. And what do you wish you knew? I knew that it would be a lot of time. I knew that it would be grueling in the schedule. I could have planned a little bit better in the beginning in terms of being organized with my time. And, I think if I had any advice with regard to what I wish I knew earlier on, it would be how I knew it would take time, but I didn't know how to plan for it with work and carving out a couple of hours in your day or carving out your weekends and managing that. I think it's a work in progress, and it's something that you actually have to experience before you even, I can say as much as possible, but you have to actually be in it to know what works for you. Some people, it works better to be doing your work on the weekend. Some people, it works better to do it in the morning. Those things have worked for me at different stages in my academic career. So if I could give any advice, it would just be to plan your time accordingly and be as organized as possible. I wish I knew how to plan ahead early on.
Great, thank you. Jordan, thoughts about working full-time and doing the program and what you know now that you could pass on to others?
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything Maureen said. So Maureen was obviously my graduate academic advisor, and I wish I had something like this before I started, because I would say working full-time and doing an online doctoral program full-time is still challenging, but it's also flexible, rewarding, and purposeful. Um, it's helped me find a lot of alignment in my work, but also the level of introspection. I mean, I'm normally a very introspective and reflective person, but even more so now because I didn't, I think, consult enough current doctoral students and researchers and candidates before I applied. And as I was researching, I think I was researching to create a story that was just right for me. But to Maureen's point, like, I didn't know what was right for me until I was in it. So I think I was focusing on the wrong things, and that now I'm noticing that, and I don't necessarily regret it. An example is I'm 29, right? So at the time that I started researching, I was 26, and I was focusing on, I want to have a terminal degree and finish everything by time I'm 30, because the way I was thinking, education, as much as I love it and love being a student, it's holding me up from doing other things in my life. But with this, I'm operating on my own timeline, and no one necessarily told me to do that. So something that I wish I knew beforehand is, aside from the struggles that I've had with my ego and, connecting that to my ambition, is I wish I researched more about what the dissertation process would look like from student to candidate to defending a little bit better, across all the types of institutions. Because now at the point where I am, preparing for the dissertation proposal, I don't think I am better for a fully online doctoral program. I think I belong in a hybrid program like Vipasha, if not a traditional in-person. But like I said, I just know I didn't want to go from home to work to campus, then campus back home in New York City. So yeah, I would just be more intentional about my research and actually ask the people who are going through it.
Great, thanks. And yeah, we're going to ask about the dissertation process in a second. Jolie?
Yeah, I mean, I never, it sort of like didn't really occur to me to not do both together. I think part of it was because like financially I couldn't not work. So I think maybe I sort of created a story around how studying higher education and working in it at the same time could be really beneficial, which I think that is the case. It was never really something I was strongly considering pursuing school without working. The one thing just a short answer to the question is it's really hard. And as time goes on, for me, like I've only have taken on more responsibility at work. So the more responsibility I have at work and the further I've gotten along in the doctoral program, actually the more challenging. So the coursework was the easy part by far. And the dissertation phase and the dissertation proposal phase, just because it's much more fluid, at least in my program, has been significantly more challenged. And I've also reached that part when I have more responsibilities at work. So my position has changed. So it's been tough. And when I first started in my doctoral program, my husband, who wasn't my husband at the time, was out of state in grad school. So I was like on the Bolt bus, like going back and forth to DC, visiting, doing work, sitting there with my computer, on the bus, just kind of doing what I needed to do. And it was tough, and it's continued to stay tough. It's just the challenge, it just like sort of different flavors of challenge, but it continues to stay tough in different ways. I don't think that's a bad thing, but it's something that people just, I think, need to be aware of and know, depending on what kinds of family obligations you have, what your work looks like, it's going to look different. I'm very fortunate that my job is very flexible, so which has allowed me the flexibility to pursue my work. So for example, if I had to get up to Columbia for a class that started at 5 o'clock, I could negotiate that with my boss. So I've had I have a lot of autonomy at work, which I'm really thankful for. And I think that's part of why I was able to make this work. And I'll say a little bit more about that when I talk about my dissertation. But for me, it was really the only way I could do the program that I was able to do, because I had flexibility with work.
Yeah, and staying with you, Jolie, can you tell us a little bit more about the dissertation process and what do you think would be helpful for folks to know about?
Sure. So, my dissertation, I'm kind of an odd fit for a practitioner. I'm definitely a practitioner scholar. I know some people say the term scholar practitioner. I wouldn't call myself that. However, I think that my program, different people come through it. It tends to be for a mixture of people who are interested in faculty careers, so faculty in higher education programs, and people who want to pursue practitioner careers or do a combination of the two. I've never had aspirations for a faculty route. However, I gravitated towards intellectual topics that I think may be more in line with what you'd commonly see for somebody pursuing a faculty route. So my dissertation focuses on faculty teaching, which is actually something that before I started at Teachers College, as odd as it sounds, I really, and I think a lot of administrators don't think about it as much. We think about our administrative areas or, all of the things that go on in education around classroom teaching and learning. And I was, that way as well. And so I became interested in this just having taken, there were some required classes in the program at Teachers College around curriculum and instruction and teaching and learning. I got really excited about it. And I was just like, oh my God, how do all of these higher ed people, talk about higher education and we don't talk about what goes on inside the classroom, in my view, enough. So I got really excited about it and decided to pursue that for my dissertation. My dissertation was a qualitative study, and I basically studied a handful of college instructors at a minority serving institution. I was motivated by the experiences of underrepresented racial minority students studying in STEM. I started college as one of them and quickly switched out of a pre-med track. And so I became really interested in why Black, Hispanic, and other underrepresented racial minority students don't complete STEM programs. And so I decided to study teaching. And I ended up studying a group of biology professors, and I basically was like in their classes, one for an entire semester, the rest for a good chunk of a semester. And I also interviewed them about their teaching and about their thinking about their teaching. So, and my study, if I didn't have flexibility with work, my study truly would have been impossible to do. So for example, I was, traveling to go sit in on a class that ran from 10:30 to 1 p.m. one day a week as a full-time working person. So I'm really fortunate that I was given that kind of flexibility, and I could make up hours in different ways and, work with my staff to make sure things were covered. But it was a really, my case is, I think, a little bit of I think you have a really good group for the panel, but my case, I think, is probably not the norm for what you're going to find for people who pursue higher ed doctorates and they stay on the administrative side. But it was what I was excited about, and so it was what I, decided to do, and I'm glad I did. But I did not choose a logistically easy dissertation topic. I definitely could have made things much simpler for me, but I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it. And so it's exciting to be, on the other side going through all of my data. But yeah, that's sort of a quick overview of my dissertation experience.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jordan, thoughts on the dissertation process?
Sure. So I remember Rachel Smith, when I took her student services class at Baruch, she said, she encouraged us at the time to keep a notebook or a log of things that we were interested in, just in case we may change our minds down the line and would want to pursue a doctoral degree. And I started doing that, and then eventually I lost the list. But I think my programs, the goal of the American College of Education EDD program is that you would finish the program in 3 years, and minimum of 3 years, and have an increased competency in terms of leadership, research, and whatever the 7 concentrations that you can choose from. I happen to choose higher education, since that's what I have my master's in. And what they do is similar to what Jolie said, like mine isn't also a traditional way, not only because it's fully online, but because the doctoral process, normally for traditional PhDs, you do your coursework before you do your research work. For American College of Education, they want the doctoral students to simultaneously, you're taking at least 1 leadership class that's required and 1 research class that's required simultaneously. And there are 10-week terms, and then you get a 2 or 3 week break, and then followed by another 10-week term with the pairing of leadership and research classes. So they decide which classes you take, you don't choose throughout the 3 years. Eventually they stop, they start mixing you taking a leadership class and then also a dissertation research class. And then a dissertation, a leadership class, and then your concentration. So right now, for instance, I'm in year 3, second term of the year. I'm taking 2 leadership classes and then the dissertation proposal class. All of the dissertation research courses are sequential. You need to pass, the grades are either pass or NP, not pass. If you get a not pass, it obviously delays you and your process as a doctoral candidate. It delays when you get a committee. It delays when you propose. It delays when you get IRB approval. So with the dissertation classes sort of being stacked on top of each other, you really need to be making sure that you're grasping the content across the 10 weeks. I think what really prepared me for that mindset is I took student development and educational policy online for Baruch's master's in higher education administration. And just remembering the module-based format for however long the semester was, and remembering experiences from Blackboard in college, that prepared me to handle like the discussion board and the weekly assignments and the readings. But the dissertation process for me is I'm having to work full-time, travel for work, manage my department, speak to my students, at the same time handle at least 1 other class that has nothing to do with my actual dissertation research. So for us, what's also unorthodox, I think even for online programs, is you do not get to choose your committee members. My dissertation committee is very small. It's only 2 people, the dissertation chair and the dissertation committee member, and we have an evaluator. And it can feel very impersonal at times, but that's just because of the online nature. I would say it has not been a smooth process, the dissertation process, only because I don't think I was prepared for the level of writing, rewriting, revising, and editing that you have to do, incorporating the feedback from a number of the faculty who don't always see eye to eye across discipline. If you have a quantitative study, you're going to be on a different path. If you're on a qualitative study, a different path. My program discourages us, doctoral candidates, in the dissertation sequence to do mixed methods. And they also discourage us from doing research on students under the age of 18, protected participants. So it almost makes it harder, because if you don't have an idea going into your program, it can sort of delay you if you're getting to the point where you're still unsure. At the time of researching, I was told by the admissions that you don't need a topic, but then by time of application, they said, nothing binding, but please let me know what you're considering. And I did. Nothing of what I submitted is what I'm doing now. I'm on like my 3rd concept. And now because of the coronavirus pandemic, a number of doctoral candidates in my situation, all of us around the world, we're having to sort of shift how we do our methodologies to collect our data. And you can't get IRB approval unless that chapter 3 methodology is just like ironclad tight. So it's really different per program, per type of institution, for hybrid, online, and traditional. So I strongly recommend that people be very intentional and in-depth with the research they do about the dissertation process before selecting the programs.
Thank you. Helpful. Maureen, thoughts on the dissertation process?
Yeah, I mean, well said to both of you. Well said, Jordan. I think it's very, very important, especially in light of everything that's going on with this pandemic, that you think really thoughtfully about whether or not you want a program that's online, that's hybrid, or that's in person. Mine was the traditional, the PhD program at the Graduate Center is definitely the traditional route. We completed the coursework and then got into the proposal phase, the first exam, the second exam, and then, you know, the whole actual dissertation process in defense. So it was definitely much more a traditional process. The PhD program at the Graduate Center is in urban education, and it is very broad. I have students in my cohort who are working in K-12 education, students in high schools who are teachers, a lot of students in the community colleges. I've worked with students I have had colleagues who are social workers as well, in schools and in nonprofits. So it's very broad. While it is urban education, it fits into different aspects of it. My dissertation process, I would say, if you plan to follow the traditional route and do a PhD program, I'm not sure exactly how structured the EDD program, how it aligns with the PhD process. You know, my recommendation is to utilize the classes that you're taking to start thinking about your topic. I did that very early on, and even still, it was difficult for me. I knew that I wanted to focus on historically Black colleges and universities, but that is so broad. I would say narrow, get as narrow as you can, narrow it down. HBCUs, leadership, finance. What does it mean when you talk about finance, financing at a private, at a public? Narrowing is key when it comes to trying to decide on a topic, and it's so important to do that. I was lucky enough, you know, with the PhD program, and I think most traditional PhD programs where you get to pick your committee members, that is a very important part of the process because you'll be working so closely with them. And my committee members were people like professors I've had classes with, you know, so I say think about that process once you're in and you're choosing your classes. Look at the relationship you've had with the professors, look at their scholarly work. Will they be able to lend themselves to you? Will they avail themselves to you, their level of expertise? As I mentioned, I focused on litigation in Maryland's 4 historically Black colleges, and I knew that I wanted someone with a legal background on my committee. And I had taken a class with Professor David Bloomfield, and he's great. And then I also had taken a theory class because of my lit review and the theoretical framework. I knew that would play a big role in my study. So I wanted to have someone who knew much more about it. So I had someone definitely who had a big theoretical background. I had a legal expertise, and my committee chair was someone who had extensive experience in higher education and had been on a lot of accrediting boards throughout the South, so that I knew he would be able to provide me some insight in that area. So if you are following the traditional route, I would say, you know, and you're able to pick your committee members, I would say to start thinking about that very early on and choose your classes wisely. Not every single class. You don't have to use every single class to focus on what your ultimate topic will be, but you should definitely try to interweave, you know, what your interests are in those classes. Because once my coursework was done, then you're jumping into your first exam, which really touches upon what you've learned. But then when you're getting into your second exam, it's really a proposal of what this research is going to be like, what the methodology is. So you really want to hone in on what that topic is. So what I would say is definitely utilize the classes that you're taking to build on that. Definitely utilize your time there to figure out who you would want on your committee, because they have to work, you know, it has to be a cohesive process, and you want committee members who are on the same page, even if they're not specifically on the topic, that you communicate with them well and that you have a good working relationship with them. I was also going to mention something else about the dissertation, the IRB process. I mean, that I don't know I'll stop at one point, but the IRB process, I had to get IRB at CUNY, and then I also had to get IRB because I was focusing initially on 8 institutions, and I had to get IRB approval at each of those institutions. And that is a lot of work. That is a lot of paperwork. And in the end, I ended up getting approval at 3 only, which was fine. But just to let you know that, especially when you're dealing with human subjects and in the whole IRB process, it takes a lot of time. You want to be as organized as possible, and you want to narrow your topic, because I think that will benefit people in the end when you try to, again, I can't stress it enough, to narrow your subject matter.
Suzanne, could I jump in real quick?
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just Maureen, everything you said was so, both of you guys was so great. I'm like freaking out over getting IRB from 8 places. That's a huge effort. Good for you for going for it and getting the 3. It's a lot of work. We talk a lot about the difference between PhD programs and EDD programs. My program is a Doctor of Education, and it is, I think, a lot more similar to Maureen's experience as a PhD student. In this traditional, you do your coursework, you pursue your certification exams, and then you're at the proposal phase. Just to add a little bit more, meat to this, the proposal phase for most folks the dissertation process, I should say, for most folks in my program is usually at least 3 years. Usually proposal, data collection, analysis, and then defense. And I say at least 3 years, it's often more. So for me, it's longer. And, working full time and all these other life, that doesn't help move things quicker. So I just want to say that it's not always just about like the program, it's about the faculty too within the program. So people in my program, for example, move at different speeds. There's not a set, it's very much like an academic intellectual experience, like you probably hear about, and probably a little bit more close to PhD programs. But I would just say, for anybody who's thinking about this, you don't want to just look at the program, you want to look at the faculty within it, not only what they're doing, but how do they work with their students, talk to their students. I mean, if you're trying to do things quickly, talking and just trying to get a sense, again, not program or school specific, although that may, certain programs may have very strict sort of, this is how it goes, and there's a cohort and it moves this way. The higher and post-secondary education program at Teachers College is not at all like that. It's very sort of individualized, and it's about the student and their advisor. So I would just say it's school, it's what are the courses going to look like, it's, what is the program sort of set up for, but then also how does the specific faculty member work with their advisees? Because even within, I know in my program, people move at different paces, and things tend to move differently. And that often depends, not just on the advisor, but the sort of the topic, but sometimes it is very advisor specific. So trying to get a sense of that is helpful. But I think that, like a lot of people say, like EDD versus PhD, it's often not really that black and white, that all Doctor of Educations are like this and all PhDs are like this.
Thanks, Julie.
Thanks.
I have one more question, and then I think those of you out there might have your own questions too, so I just want to prep you. We'll ask you to use the raise your hand function or put in the chat that you have a question, and we'll figure out the unmuting everybody. So get ready for that. And like I said, yeah, you could feel free to pose questions in the chat as well. I just want to ask a final question about how you think having the doctoral degree will impact your career. Like now that you're in the program or finished, as best you know, like what's your sort of hope career-wise? Do you want to start, Jolie?
Sure. So, I told you guys earlier that I started it really for an intellectual sort of challenge and to set myself up for professional possibilities. And I think along the way, I've realized that the biggest benefit has been the intellectual challenge part. I hope that it will open doors for me professionally, but I think that the biggest benefit really has been, like, I genuinely think differently, now, having gone through this. I think in a much more critical, careful, thoughtful way. And that's something I'm really excited about, and something that I didn't really foresee. I think that I don't know, I feel like I'm a little bit of I definitely have a little bit of imposter syndrome. I know a lot of our students have that sometimes, but I have it. But I'm very much like, I'm sort of like the odd one out here. Like, I'm not a scholar, I'm not an intellectual, but I feel really proud of how I've just grown in that way. So that has been like just a big takeaway. I'm hopeful that it will open doors, and it will be a signal as I continue pursuing different kinds of professional opportunities. It's hard for me to say. I don't think that I've been able to. I think that the position that I'm in right now, overseeing my department, is a position that I would be in regardless of being in a doctoral program. Pursuing the doctorate and showing that that was something that I was working towards, didn't position me. I was already sort of in my institution and moving in a momentum to move in that direction. So I think if you're thinking about wanting certain professional possibilities and I think that's really important and great. I just hope that there maybe are other reasons too. And I think that sort of outweighed the intellectual challenge piece, but the intellectual challenge piece, now that I'm almost done, in terms of benefit, outweighs, I think, what will come in terms of professional advancement. I mean, I hope good things, but I guess we'll have to see. Well, I'll have to invite myself to sit on another panel in the years. But I'm very hopeful that it will sort of serve me well, but mostly because intellectually, I think that I am a stronger, more competent thinker than I was before I started this, and that will benefit me moving on in future professional endeavors.
Great. Jordan?
I just realized I never shared what my my topic is. So I'll say that real quick and then answer the question, Suzanne. So I'm working on a qualitative study, and my topic is researching the lived experiences of college student leaders through the lens of social justice, and how that has impacted their leadership development. And again, it's my third concept, but it was connected to my second. I had to tweak it during the dissertation process because of feedback from my committee. I think the doctoral experience for me, because I'm still kind of ambitious, and because my 2 degrees from Baruch are in education administration, and in undergrad it was operations management. For me, I intentionally chose a Doctor of Education in leadership because I too, similar to what Bipasha said in her video, I wanted to do something outside of CUNY, outside of student affairs, and be a little bit more versatile. Because when you're studying leadership, similar to my operations management bachelor's, has been very transferable and helpful, working in academic affairs and student affairs, and I work at a nonprofit now. I never thought I would work at one. So I think getting the degree in leadership while I work in an organization that allows me to mentor and help develop diverse college student leaders, it's given me hope that I don't have to just stay in the higher education space. I'm not limited. And I remember when I was a Baruch grad student, us going to a panel where they had the institutional advancement interim VP there. I think his name is Stanton, last name Stanton. And something I remember him saying is, don't be afraid to choose non-traditional paths, outside of the typical student affairs. And I could not really see that then, but I 100% agree now, because my classmates are mostly K through 12 educators around the world. They have families and they're doing it. I mean, a lot of assistant principals, a lot of principals, and they're just making it work. So every time I think about complaining, I just look at all the people who have so much more responsibilities, full-time work and parents, and able to do this. But for me, originally, I wanted to get a doctorate in case I chose to go the path of a traditional dean of students at a 4-year institution. And now working at a nonprofit where 400 of my students are at 80 different elite, prestigious, all the Ivies and Stanford and MIT, it's like, I think it's changed for me somewhat with the level of work and advocacy that I've had to do for my first generation and low income students. So I'm not just limited to dean of students now. Like maybe for me, I'd like to be assistant dean or associate dean, because I maybe don't have to supervise as many professional staff, but it's sort of like a super trumped up academic advisor position for undergraduates. So it's really like when you go through this process, aside from the coursework and the research, I would say continually to be intentional about what you want your career to look like. And I'm still honest with my students. I can be a doctoral student and still say, I don't know. It's a very iterative process, so I change my mind a lot. So right now it's giving me the flexibility and the transferability that allow me to maneuver however else. It can help in entrepreneurial ventures. It can help me design my own business and pay it forward to the next generation. I'm not limited to education, even though it's a Doctor of Education degree. And I think a lot of new professionals coming out of graduate programs in just higher ed or student affairs, you know, I remember what it was like to have that energy and that hope and be that excited, but just don't think you're limited in that way.
Thank you. Maureen?
Yes, I would echo what both panelists said. I think if you're pursuing the PhD route and your goal is to work to do research and to publish, you know, being a faculty member, that has a completely different trajectory when you're getting a doctoral degree, because you have to get tenured, you have to publish. I've written 2 articles, and I've not had any of them published. My dissertation committee, they're like, why have you not published any of these things that you've written? You know, and I'm not certain if I want to go down that route and work towards becoming a faculty person. I think if you're getting a PhD and that's what you want to do, you have to know that that is the road you have to take. I think with a PhD or EDD, an advanced degree, for the most part, it will help you advance. But with any degree, you have to do the work. You have to market yourself. You have to utilize it in some capacity. So my hope is to do that beyond just having the degree. I think you do have to maneuver it and use it in a way, whether it's presenting at conferences, whether it's writing, and whether it's utilizing the research that you've done or the degree in whatever professional capacity. I think you have to, it just can't just have the degree and expect it to raise your salary level in one way or another. So I think that aspect of it is there. I think it's different if it's a PhD or an EDD and ultimately what you want to do. But again, for me, it was much more of an intellectual pursuit, as well as my professional development. But I started in 2011, and I am a completely different person now, I think intellectually, and my thought process on things and the way I view higher education, the way I view policy. I've learned so much and I've evolved in so many ways. So it's definitely just enhanced me. And, you know, while there are things I could do differently, I wish I had done differently, some things I wish I knew, I wouldn't change it, because it's elevated me, I think, intellectually and academically in a way that I did not expect. I thought I knew where I would be, but I had no idea that it would just enhance me intellectually in this way. And for that, I feel like I've been elevated if nothing else, I've been elevated in that way.
Thanks, Maureen. Before we open up to questions, I did want to mention, because a student had emailed me today about whether Baruch was going to have a program, and I was emailing with our dean, who said that we hope to have a program in 2 to 3 years, an executive EDD program in higher education administration. Just reading this, designed for professionals working in higher ed or a related field who seek service in high-level roles, deans, VPs, or provosts. Designed to be completed in 2 years and a hybrid program. So just FYI, in case you're curious, it's not here yet, but it might be on the horizon for Baruch, this executive EDD program. So is there anyone, I want to open it up to questions, and let's see, you can use the raise your hand function or put, let us know in the chat that you'd like to ask a question. Let's see, oh, I see John George, oops. Let's see, okay, I think I've unmuted you.
I think we're doing the same thing.
Go ahead.
Hi, how are you?
Good, what's your question?
Everyone. Just a couple of things I wanted to mention. I'm really glad that you guys pointed out some of the things that you highlighted with regards to level of commitment and focusing on the program, and obviously the opportunities that come with pursuing a doctorate. I remember many years ago, actually, while I was working at Rutgers University, I was allowed to take a few doctoral courses in non-matric while I was working at the school full time, and I was just trying to navigate things for a little bit. And if there's one thing that I also realized when it comes to these schools, when you're doing investigation, you really, really, really have to do your research, because you'd be surprised what certain schools have to say about their programs versus other institutions. And obviously it's up to you to make up your own mind. So when I did this doctoral program at Rutgers, obviously I was not in the same element as the students that were there as matriculated students. But having realized like sacrifices some people made, I mean, there are people who were coming in from Boston, Massachusetts, like once or twice a week to come for these classes. This is before everything became like online and remote learning. And the level of dedication and the in-depth research that was required, like I really learned a lot more about how committed you really have to be successful in this program, but to also take on things in a totally different way than what you would originally imagine. So I knew for myself that I was not ready, but I'm glad that I had that experience, because I know now that I've applied to doctoral programs already, and I've been admitted into one here in the region. So I'm down here in Texas now. I just finished the program last year. I feel more mentally and emotionally prepared to take on the next step. But what I've also found is that when you go to different schools and talk to them about what, like you were saying, Ms. Samity, about understanding the program, knowing what it's all about, what they have to offer, how it pertains to what your career goals are and what you want to accomplish, finding if you have like the right mentors, people who can support you, etc. I'll tell you, there were some people who I'd go to one school here, for instance, and they tell you one thing, and you go to another institution and you hear something else. But then sometimes you even hear about, sometimes there's like a little internal competition between the EDD and the PhD programs, and it varies from school to school. So I think what I really want to get at is more along the lines of, doing your own research. And obviously the things that you all pointed out are very, very important. But really, sometimes for a lot of us, we just go by what we see online, or we go by, some of the criteria that we do from our research. But it is important to definitely, if you can, go to the schools. If you can, engage in a Zoom chat, especially with everything going on the way they are these days. Try to ask the right questions and talk to the right people, and not just go by what you see on a website or in literature or materials. Would you guys agree?
Anybody? Yes, I see shaking head.
Yeah, I agree.
Maureen?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think you have to definitely do your research. Like I said, I took a couple of classes non-matric. Not a lot of programs, allow you that opportunity. But if you are able to do that, I think it's really important. Again, the online, in-person, hybrid format, I think is really, really important. I think it's good to know the process is like when you get to the dissertation phase and your committee members. I think it's really I guess it depends on the program, but it's really important to have the flexibility of being able to choose your committee members. I have colleagues in the programs who are able to choose committee members outside of the graduate center. If you're doing some sort of a particular research in a nonprofit and you want a faculty person in another discipline or another university, we allow that. So I think all of that is important, especially at the dissertation phase. At least for a PhD, it's completely separate. The coursework and the dissertation process are two completely different processes. And the dissertation phase is much more of an isolating process. It's because the work is on you. You're not going to class. You're getting up, doing the research. You're making the contacts. You're creating the schedule because you're not going to class. You're creating that schedule for yourself of writing regularly. You know, you have a committee, but at least with my committee, and I think with most PhD committees, they're not contacting you with a timeline. You are creating that timeline. So it's very important that you have people who are in your corner. It's very important that you're in a program where you have that community, so that when you are in isolation, because it is, that you're really not.
Suzanne?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So, I just want to add one point. We're talking a lot about researching programs, and people are endorsing researching programs. I just want to make sure everyone knows that one way you can research a program is by calling the program itself and asking to have an individual meeting with a student. Most doctoral programs will have student representatives who, if you're in the area, you can take them out for coffee, you can have a Skype conversation with them. And it's not always something that we think to do. We think to do like researching through the internet or through other ways, but really individual conversations where you share what you're interested in and hear from them and really listen can be really impactful for making decisions. So I just want to put that out there.
Thanks. Yeah. Relisha, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Relisha. I'm actually in the EDD program at Northeastern right now. I just wanted to throw in a quick tip, and especially this was also helpful when I was looking at EDD programs. One of the biggest things for me was support systems, because I knew I wanted to do my program online, but I've never experienced online courses before. And also I did like all the things you're not supposed to do when you're in a doctorate program. You get married, you change jobs, you have a kid, you move maybe twice. So it can be an emotional roller coaster when you're going through all these life transitions and changes when you still have like a doctoral classes to attend to. So it's really important to have support systems in and outside of the program, because I'm actually right now in the middle of like my third leave of absence, but I feel okay about that because I have a really supportive advisor. And I know that my program is also very flexible. They actually pause my time of finishing the degree if I go on a leave of absence. So I don't feel the pressure of having to finish. The only pressure of having to finish is the one I put on myself. So the support system, the outside of the program, is really important, because I think if it wasn't for really supportive colleagues, supervisors, and a partner, it would be really hard to find dig deep into like the motivation of staying in the program. Because again, it can be an emotional roller coaster at certain times. So that was just my quick tip about when you're going through this process of finding a program. Really ask, especially as Dr. Bolzer just said, I actually was able to get a couple of folks on the phone and take them out for coffee to ask them, you're working full time and you have a child, how are you handling this program right now? And they're telling me their own tips and what to expect. And everything they said was true 10 times over. So that was already helping me like already mentally prepare for what to expect. So all great tips. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Relisha. That's helpful. Melissa, do you want to say your question out loud, or you just want me to read it in the chat? Can you unmute yourself? Melissa.
Hi, Betty. Sure, I'll unmute myself. I hope you can hear me okay.
You're coming a little bit funny.
To the panelists, without giving away any personal information. Hi, can you hear me now?
Try one more time, and if not, I'll read your question. Go ahead.
Maybe you can just read my question.
Okay, sure, I'll do that. So let's see.
Okay.
Program funding.
Question was about program funding and whether or not any of your programs are fully or partially funded.
Right, funding. I remember, Jordan, you said there was a $20,000 fee for yours. Jolie?
Yeah, American College of Education is not fully funded. It's like all out of pocket.
Okay. Jolie and Maureen, is it also out of pocket or is it funded?
I would say the program at TC, at least at this moment, maybe things will change, is partially funded. Sort of depends on the case. So at different moments in time for me, at different phases, I got different levels of scholarship and funding through graduate assistantships. So I don't think that there is, I honestly don't know the answer. I don't think that there is one set, this is what it is. So there's a lot of variability depending on student and depending on advisor. So I've been fortunate. I haven't had a bill from Teachers College in a very long time. That wasn't always the case, but there were moments in time when I first started in the program when I was still doing my coursework, when I had teaching assistantship. So I did at one point work full-time, go to school part-time, 2 classes, and also have a teaching assistantship. And that was in part so that I could, in part because I wanted to, it was an experience I wanted to have, but in part financial. And there were other moments in time where I was a graduate assistant working for the program, doing different kinds of roles for the higher and post-secondary education program. And then there were other moments in time where I was a research assistant. And so each one of these different roles would come attached with different financial benefits. I honestly would have to, I should have found this out before sitting on a panel, I apologize. I honestly would have to ask at this point, if somebody were to call the Columbia to call the higher and post-secondary education program and ask flat out, if you're admitted to the doctoral program, is it fully funded or partially funded? And I am not sure what our program would say as of this moment. I think they would say it depends on the case and it's partial funding. But many doctoral students, in my experience, seem to have pretty, I guess I would say pretty good financial packages, but it's a semester by semester basis. Liza, not to put you on the spot, but maybe you can help.
Yeah, well, I think what I would say more broadly is that different programs have different packages. And this is one of the things to ask people about when you're looking at programs, especially if you're looking at programs outside of New York City. Sometimes if you're able to leave New York, that's going to open up more opportunities, and more opportunities means opportunities for funding. With most PhD or EDD programs that are operating like a PhD program, which is how I would describe the Teachers College program, there are opportunities to make funding work or to make your funding come together. That was my experience when I was in the program. But it also really heavily can depend on advisors' research schedules, so where they are in specific grants. So when you're talking to faculty members, you can say, what are your upcoming projects that you're going to be doing, and what role will your doctoral students be on those projects? So if somebody has a $500,000 NSF grant coming up over the next 5 years, that's essentially their doctoral students' funding is working on that grant. So there are a lot of differences within this. But I wouldn't rule out programs just because you think that they're going to be too expensive. Get into the conversation, ask questions, especially, and we're all in higher ed, so we all know this, is that many people take themselves out of the question about funding before they need to, because there actually are a lot of funding opportunities, especially for first-generation graduate students, first-generation college students, people who are not as traditionally represented. And so those are available, especially if you're willing to leave New York, that you can go after.
Most of you would probably advise your students, if you're in an advising capacity, that like almost everything is negotiable, even if you think it's not. So Eliza makes really good points, as always.
And Maureen, I can't remember if someone was asking me if you could get tuition. Yeah, I guess could you talk about at graduate?
At CUNY, in my role within CUNY and with the union, you get a tuition waiver. So I was fortunate enough to have that at the CUNY Graduate Center. I think, I don't know much about the EDD programs, but I think that there are funding opportunities, as Liza mentioned, you know, for first generation students, for underrepresented groups. I think as well that you have to ask the questions, because there are funds available. It may not be as much, it may not cover everything, but I think at the PhD level, PhD programs, it depends. It depends on the program, it depends on the institution, but I think there are a lot of funds available for PhD students. You know, if you're going full-time and you might not be able to do that working as professionals, I know a lot of students who had a big chunk of their tuition covered. As well, people who do part-time programs, I think there are a lot of grants available, so you have to do a lot of that research. I was fortunate enough, especially with the dissertation phase and having to go back and forth in Maryland, I applied for a lot of grants, and I was able to utilize that money for my research as well, because that's an additional cost. But at the PhD, I think, you know, you have to ask the questions. I think don't assume that the funds are not available, even as part-time students. I think those things are negotiable. And even if it means looking out of state, any program, I think there's definitely worth the research there.
And I just wanted to say, I know that Bipasha, I can't remember if she said this on the video, but she chose Drexel in part because they had a community college. If you work at a community college, they had a scholarship for you. So that was part of her reasoning with that for anybody at community colleges. I think maybe just if there's one more question, otherwise we'll wrap up. Anybody with a burning, oh, 2 people raise their hand, let's see. Megan, did you want to ask your question?
Hi, yes. Thank you everyone for taking the time out to speak with us. So my question is, I wanted to know if you have like some recommendations or suggestions in terms of maybe, I would say, building up your professional, I would say like career before you go into like a PhD or an EDD program. I asked this because I just finished the HEA program last June. And I'm still in an administrative assistant role, but I'm not sure if, and I am thinking of a PhD program, but I'm not sure if I should still, you know, continue maybe to move up a little within higher ed before I decide that I want to go into the PhD program. I'm not sure in my current role if I'm getting as much as I would want in terms of like, you know, just in terms of work in higher ed. So I'm not sure if maybe that's something that you have experienced, that you've thought about, and maybe it's something that you can share with us today.
I'll say a few things. And I don't know if this is absolutely correct, but I'm thinking with the PhD, I think, I don't know if it has as much to do with your work experience as it does with your research interests and what it is you want to pursue. While I think, you know, you definitely want to have professional work under your belt. If it's something that you're thinking about and you're able to take a class just to experience that, I think that would be a good idea. But I don't think you necessarily have to be at a senior level or at a particular work professional level before that makes you eligible to apply. I think committees are looking at your writing and they're looking at your research interests and they're looking at what your focus is with regard to whatever it is you want to research. So I wouldn't put so much emphasis and stress on trying to find experience and professional work. I think about what you want to do ultimately with the research and with your degree, and then let that steer you, and definitely have conversations with folks. But I wouldn't focus too much on, you know, I need to be at this particular professional role before I even apply to a program. Not sure if anyone else wants to comment about that.
Hi, Megan. I actually was in a coordinator role when I applied to my program, and that was a couple years ago. So I had similar sentiments when I was considering EDD. I already was like having a negative self-taught of like, yeah, they're not gonna accept, they're not even gonna accept me because I've only had X number of years of experience, or I'm like on the bottom of the the totem pole here. But I was actually really glad to get encouragement from my professors and colleagues to apply, and I was really happy. And I realized the program, they didn't care so much about the years of experience or where your title is or where you are in the hierarchy. It's about your passion and your interests and what your plans are for your own professional development. That has to communicate that effectively in your personal statement, and I'm sure you'll be successful that way.
Great. So I think on that note, we'll wrap up, unless there's any other burning comments. Thanks so much to our panelists and speakers, and for everyone for being here this evening. It's great. This is such a good topic, and so I'm glad that so many of you could join us. I will send around the recording, and we're happy to hear about other ideas you have about gathering. Not sure we're going to be able to do. We usually do a higher ed happy hour, but we're thinking about, could we do a virtual opportunity? I know a lot of you are want those networking opportunities, and to the extent that we could help you make that happen, we're here. And I think all of our panelists are open to connecting afterward. Yes, LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
Everyone's on LinkedIn, so use your LinkedIn. There's a great community on there. And thanks again, everybody. Have a good evening, and look forward to being in touch.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Marnie. Thank you for putting this together. Very good.
Yes, it was very fun. Congrats, Maureen.
Thank you. Great to see you, Jordan, Jolie, Robbie.
Maureen.
Thank you.
I miss you guys.
Bye, everybody. Have a good night.